Ladies and gentlemen, a very good afternoon to you now as we record this on actually Monday, the 13th of July. This Seatrade cruise talk is going to be broadcast in 3 days' time. So I would like to welcome in particular, apart from the audience all over the world, listening to us and watching us, our distinguished panel here, starting with a lady among us, Monic van der Heyden, the commercial manager cruise of the port of Amsterdam, and the chair lady of River Cruise Europe, a new association established only last September in order to represent all sectors, so to say, of the European river cruise industry. So welcome, Monique. I guess you are joining us from the Netherlands. Is that right?
Yes, I'm joining you from the Netherlands, from our home office, as we're still not allowed to work with too many people in our building in Amsterdam. But I'm happy to join. Yeah.
So welcome to you, Monique. And with us is Emilio Freeman, Vice President, Itineraries and Destinations of SeaDream Yacht Club. I would like to welcome among us Rudi Schreiner. Rudi is the President and co-founder of AmaWaterways. Rudi, from where are you speaking this afternoon?
I'm at home in Westlake Village in Los Angeles. Yeah, we are still actually all working from home. We were thinking about going back on July 20th to the office, but now we might delay the evening a little longer. So, but we have beautiful weather here, and yeah, it's nice summertime in California.
Very good. Actually, I'm speaking to you. We are all spread across Europe and the United States. I'm speaking to you from a very remote village, also from my home, from a very remote village located about an hour's drive north of the port of Kiel and roughly 2 hours drive northeast of Hamburg. So in some distance from two of the bustling normally bustling German cruise hubs. Now very calm cruise hubs. But anyway, we are starting up here again in Europe. And only last week, the message was received turning to the luxury end and the expedition end of cruising that Hapag-Lloyd is going to start, Hapag-Lloyd Cruises is going to start operation again with 2 ships. At the end of this month, we even have a new operator, Adlerschiffe Expedition, joining the market roughly a week before. So the industry is in a way getting back. I just received information also that Arosa has successfully restarted operation on the French rivers 2 days ago on the 11th of July. So the cruise ships are returning, and that's what we want to talk about in today's Seatrade Cruise Talks, entitled Restarting Europe's River and Luxury Cruises, Lessons Learned. And what the luxury end of the market, the expedition end of the market, the ocean market, as well as river cruise ships and the river market have in common is that we all operate with small ships, and we work with small ships. We are carrying dozens of passengers, maximum hundreds of passengers, but definitely not thousands of passengers. And so, although the statutory regulations and rules are quite different in inland navigation and in deep sea navigation, a deep sea operation, we have that in common. And so I think it's quite interesting to bring together in this session ocean cruising and river cruising, and to talk about the first experiences made with a restart. I actually intend to split this session into 6 parts. We will start with a small welcome and with a small short reflection on what has happened in the recent months. And then we are going to proceed, and we are going to look at the statutory regime we have around us, at rules and guidelines that have been drawn up to restart the ocean cruise business and the river cruise business, before we review actually those operations which have started up again, trying to identify chances and opportunities, but also trying to identify challenges that have been encountered. After that, we'll have a look at the ports. Monique, that's when you will especially be requested to share with us your experiences. What does COVID-19 mean for ports and destinations? And eventually, I would like to close this session, which will take about between 60 and approximately 80 minutes. I would like to close it with a look at the perspectives, probable perspectives for the remaining 2020 season and a lookout for the season of next year, 2021. How can our sector of the industry, the small and upmarket cruise ships, how can this sector evolve? Well, looking back at how COVID developed, I remember that in January, German virologists at least were still telling us that this was all far away and that this wouldn't concern us all too much. And I must say that I personally felt that something is coming towards us or over us at the end of February, actually. And March brought, so to say, the downfall of many industries and many work processes, including ocean and river cruising, or in terms of river cruising, the European season at least didn't start at all. And now we have come 4 months forward. The world is looking quite differently. And this is what we will go into detail about. Emilio, actually, you have in a way gone through the circle from the shutdown to the restart already at the top end of ocean cruising. And my first request to you would be to take us a bit through the last 4 months in your company. What has happened? What were the decisions you took? How did you cope with that? And how did you start up again?
Sure. I can share with you that it's been a long 4 months. Come the middle of March, when everything was actually a little bit earlier than that, we were starting to look at alternate plans and adjusting some plans in the Caribbean, which is where both of our vessels were based. And we started seeing some things, and we had to make some slight adjustments to our itineraries then. But then when the middle of March came and everything shut down, we were trying to figure out what is the next plan. And fortunately, we have an owner that's very, very involved. We're a privately held company. And together, we looked at a variety of different of options. We knew that this is not going to be a quick and easy road that we're going to follow, that there's going to be some pain to be had. We looked and started trying to think outside of the box. In that period of time, when we got into April and the beginning of May, we were looking at things, as an example, working with some companies that were oil companies off the coast of Venezuela, where we would shuttle their workers to and from the oil rigs, and they had lost the ability to fly their crew in and out. And we looked at trying to possibly work with them and helping them with that operation. In the end, it didn't work out, but it was that kind of thinking. It was that kind of thinking outside of the box that we looked at. We recognized that for us, we wanted to try to get back as quickly as possible as soon as everything started becoming a little firmer and we knew what the horizon had. We did not send all of our crew members home. We felt that the opportunity for us was probably going to be in the Mediterranean or in Europe overall. So we've repositioned both of our vessels from the Caribbean, sailed them across the Atlantic and went to Lisbon, and we stayed there for several weeks. And during that time, our owner felt that our opportunity might be in Norway. Norway does not have the infection rate and the problems that the rest of the world seems to be having. So we took one of our vessels and sailed it to Ålesund, Norway, and we stayed there. During the time that we were in Lisbon and up into Norway, we did a lot of training with the crew, both on normal operations and both in preparation of what will come about with social distancing and things like that. And also training with the possibility of sailing in Norwegian waters. And May turned into June, and within a span of no more than 4 weeks, we elected to open up and sail in Norway. We believed that that opportunity to sail along the Norwegian coast would make itself available to us. There were some legal and regulatory issues that we would have to address. Can you sail along the Norwegian coast with our kind of vessel? We had to cross those bridges. But normally, what ends up happening in any any normal planning cycle, it's about a 2-year process. It's 2 years to go from looking at an itinerary, looking at a destination, and figuring out what you can do until the point that you actually sail it. That is roughly a 2-year process in dealing with port agents and port authorities and tour operators and destination companies. And we had a maximum of 4 weeks to put that together. So there were a lot of hiccups, there were a lot of bumps along the way when we started our first voyage in the first week in June. Actually, June 20th, I apologize. June 20th is when we started our first voyage. And we recognized quickly that there was a lot of potential there. And we quickly added a second vessel. Both vessels went and started, one on the 20th, the one on the 27th. They were both in Oslo, Norway on the 27th of June. And that's really when we first started truly taking off along the coast. We, tremendous success. You had to be flexible because, you know, putting everything into place in roughly 4 weeks of time, everything wasn't ready in terms of the operational plan and in terms of the destination plan. But our guests came on board, primarily Norwegians, and had a great experience and are continuing to have. We're sailing in July. We're right now along the Norwegian coast. Both vessels will be back in Norway or back in Bergen later on this week. We're excited about that. And we've even had the problem that many cruise lines would love to have, is that we were oversold on a couple of voyages. And that's a great problem to have in this
Although
time.
the Norwegian source market is new to you, is that right, Emilio? You are probably having Norwegians, a couple of Norwegians on board, but you were not concentrating on the Norwegian source market in the past. Is that right?
No, but you're right about that, Frederik. But I will say that we've been to Norway once before, or actually twice before in our 19-year history, and our company is probably the only true Norwegian-based company in the world in terms of cruising. And we do attract a number of Norwegians on just about every one of our voyages. The difference is that we pretty much follow the sun. We're in the Mediterranean and the Caribbean year-round, and going north up to Norway is a little bit waters that are not as comfortable for us in terms of the type of destination experience that we could normally provide our guests with. But that said, yes, we catered to a lot of new Norwegians that had not sailed with us before and that are new to us, so that we're attracting a new audience and we're expanding our base somewhat.
Thank you very much, Emilio. Rudi, could you tell us a little bit about the situation in your company? Actually, the lockdown here in Europe came as the European season for river cruising was about to start. And I think you have decided, if I'm right, still to put operations on hold until the 31st of August this year. Is that right? How is the situation?
Yeah, that is correct. We have 24 ships. We were operating on the Mekong, and we were operating our little vessel on the Chobe River when the whole thing started, and we were ready to start up in Europe. We were supposed to start mid-March with the European operation, so some of the earlier departures already were staffed and provisions were on the ships and so on, when everything came to a screeching halt. Yeah, and so for me, the first 2 weeks were kind of, the unknown part was the most critical side. When you had the outbreak in northern Italy, and they were slowly blocking the borders to Austria, to Germany, and then watching and seeing, and then suddenly you realized you had the first cases crossing the border, first cases in Austria, first cases in Germany. It became clear this is coming over and so on. And then suddenly mid-March, everything stopped. Worst case scenario for me was to write off the entire season. And we were actually to some degree prepared for this. And for the last 6, 7, 8 years, kind of, I was always worried about some extreme seasons, from terrorism to political unrest to low water. I mean, with the climate changes, I was also worried about such low water on the Rhine and the Danube that we couldn't possibly cruise. 2018, we had extreme low water, but we made it very well through the season. Our ships are all paid off. We have no loans. We have no debt on it. So we have a good cash position. So basically, I wrote off the whole season and hoping that we still get a few months of sailing into the season. US at that time in March was still kind of saying, okay, this is not going to affect us too much. And then it started hitting New York like a hammer, a sledgehammer. And so right now, we moved everything forward to end of August. It looks like we have to move forward into September and suspend all the September cruises slowly. We will make the next decision next week. The issue is right now that Americans are not allowed to come to Europe as long as the situation is such. And 95% of our guests are North Americans, US and Canadians. Yeah, we also, I mean, several of our ships actually are operating for APT, for Australia Pacific Touring. Now they will probably not come the entire year. I mean, Australia might be shutting the country for a longer period. I mean, they don't know yet. So for us, we still do hope that we get a few months of cruising into the season. Our ships are partially, the Rhine fleet is sitting in Holland and the Danube fleet is sitting in Linz. But we started July 5, so last Sunday, Sunday week ago, we started with one ship, with the Ama Christina for German-speaking guests. So we are doing 5-night cruises from Cologne up to Strasbourg, round trip, 5 nights, and 5 nights from Cologne to Antwerp and back. We started the first cruise with about 55, 58 guests. This will continue probably until the end of October, and the bookings are very strong. So this is through a German tour operator, and we are very. It's an interesting entry. Yeah, it's exciting for everybody that at least one ship is out there cruising, and it's also a very good learning experience for the future. So that's our situation right now. We have about 220 employees in the US. We have not laid off anybody. We have a sales office in London, or everybody remained there too. And then we have the operations office in Basel, in Switzerland. The Swiss people, most of them went on Kurzarbeit. Kurzarbeit, yeah, so it's the Swiss government is very supportive when it comes to Swiss employees. So this is where we stand right now. So hopefully things will improve. I mean, where do we go in the future? We'll talk about it also down in the next couple of questions. I think we'll talk about the future too, but that's where we stand right now.
Absolutely. Rudi, was it new to you to have a ship just for Germans or for German-speaking guests? Was this a new experience from AmaWaterways?
This was a totally new experience, yes. We've never done it before. You know, it's also, it has also, I mean, our ships are pretty much sold out almost every year. Yeah, we are still building right now 3 ships. We are building the Ama Siena, which was supposed to start in July of this year, but because of the COVID-19, construction was delayed. The ship is in the shipyard in Amsterdam, in Holland, in Heyden. We also have the Ama Lucia, which just came from from Romania up. The hull just was brought up to the Netherlands, and that one is supposed to start next year. And then we are starting with the construction of a ship in Egypt for the now. So we still have moving forward with our plans. Yeah, and I think ship construction, I'm already actually working on new ideas, new designs for post-COVID times on ships. Yeah, the interesting
So that's
part
good to
was,
hear.
the interesting
And I think
part
this is
was
also a
that
difference. This is also a difference from quite a number of deep sea operators, which are actually trying to reduce their new building activity while you are thinking along additional new projects, apparently. Monique, you're chair lady of River Cruise Europe, and River Cruise Europe, it's a new association. It works together with IG River Cruise. IG River Cruise being the body or the interest representation of the cruise line specifically, while you take the broader picture. I think you have been in close dialogue with IG River Cruise also as they were working on their guidelines, and they were actually one of the first associations out in shipping at all, in passenger shipping at all, also covering the ferry industry, defining minimum standards for operations under COVID conditions. They have drafted a guideline for a minimum standard and resumption for the resumption of river cruises in Europe under COVID-19, as they call it. Monique, could you tell us a little bit, as far as you know about it or were involved about it, about this process towards the guideline, and maybe tell us also about some key content of this guideline, which forms the basis for the river cruise restart here in Europe?
Yeah. Well, I think already in April, when we were a few weeks in lockdown, we started to work together with the IG River Cruise people, and we is in this case not only Port of Amsterdam, but Amsterdam Cruise Port and the Rotterdam Cruise Port. So in Holland, we try to together and to work together. And to avoid that each port would have its own guidelines, its own things, and that was also the reason why we contacted IG River Cruise, because if each cruise line is going to set up its own guidelines, then I think it will be very hard to work together, and it went very well and very quickly. So within a few weeks, there was already a first draft of the standards, and IG River Cruise found also the cooperation with the European Barge Union, who has a liaison with the European Commissions. So it went very quick, and a lot of cruise lines said, okay, we support and we follow these guidelines. And these guidelines, they contain guidelines about hygiene measures like disinfection, but also, and that's quite new for this COVID virus, the social distance thing, what we call here in Holland the new normal, which I don't hope it will remain the new normal. But of course, we have to deal with the 1.5 meter, or in some countries even 2 meters, and in another country 1 meter distance that people they need to keep the distance on board of the ship. So these guidelines also include guidelines for rearranging routes on board. For example, buffets are closed and dinners will be served and that kind of things. So just to make a safe and healthy environment for passengers and to meet the COVID requirements.
Yeah, Emilio, in the meantime, also Healthy Gateways under the European Union has established guidelines for the resumption of ocean cruise operation. I think when you started up in Norway, these guidelines were not yet available. So what was the regulatory basis actually that you were using when you developed your contingency plans or your plans for operation under what we also call in Germany, as Monique says in the Netherlands, the new normal?
Well, I can share with you that we followed and worked closely with the Norwegian government and followed the
Mm.
guidelines that they provided. Norway has been very easy to work with, and it's pretty straightforward. And um, we don't have to require guests to wear masks on board. Nobody in Norway is wearing masks.
Okay.
We do practice social distancing. We do practice the guidelines of sanitizing and cleaning your hands. You can find that hand cleaner almost everywhere on the vessel. We've been very, very careful about how we interact with our guests, how we clean the luggage, for example, when it's being brought on board. We're very, very careful about that, about disinfecting the luggage before it comes on board. We've been very careful and added some new processes, such as in our gym, as an example.
Mm.
In the gym, before you didn't have to schedule an appointment to go to the gym, but now you do. And we won't allow more than 4 people in at any given time. And once they are done, we sanitize the whole gym over again before anybody else is allowed back in. So there's different protocols and different measures that we put into place. And as it relates to the EU gateway guidelines, that's a very, very complex set of guidelines, and we're in the process of reviewing those. And whatever a member state or a given country puts into place, we will abide by those rules when we get there. We're planning to get to back to the Mediterranean, assuming everything continues as planned, in about 2 months.
Mm.
And between now and then, we will establish our formal guidelines, working with each one of the ports, each one of the states, countries, in order to ensure that we adhere to what that given country has implemented.
Can you operate at 100% capacity, lower beds capacity, or do you have to operate with reduced capacity?
Well, that's overall. I think that right now there is no restrictions on capacity, but that's one of the benefits, and I guess Rudi can also talk about this as well. Is that we're small cruise line, if you will. We don't even call ourselves a cruise line. We're a yachting company. It's all about yachting, not cruising with us.
Mm. Mm.
And given that smaller audience, it's much easier to work with individuals. Our guest complement on a smaller vessel, when we're talking about 112 guests maximum, than it is with the much larger ships, and you have 2,000 to 6,000 people on board a given vessel. So with us, it's not as complicated as you would envision.
Yeah. Rudi, how is the situation? You have now started operation with the first vessel, also to gain experience, as I understand. How is the situation with you about capacity use? And I also found it very interesting to hear from Emilio that there are actually no face masks required. Here in Germany, there's very intense use of face masks. So how are you dealing with that on the river ship, which you have brought back into operation?
We are in a different situation in Europe. Yeah, so we have capacity limitations. Our ships normally hold about 150, 160 passengers. We are currently cruising with about 60, 65. Certain ports had limitations of a maximum of 100 guests coming into the ports. But in general, the limitations are somewhere around 65, 70% maximum capacity. You have to have the social distancing in the restaurants. So you have to wear face masks when you move between public spaces. Once you sit down in the restaurant, then you're okay. You can take off your face mask. But when you move around, yeah, you have to wear face mask. We have shields, plexiglass shields at the reception areas. We also installed shields actually in the lounge areas and so on. They are almost invisible. They are done very well, but there's a lot of protection. 80% of our ships have twin balconies. That means they have a French balcony as well as an outside balcony. And then you have a monster, a big top deck for, all meals are being served. In our past already, we had the choices already in our history that you can have a sit-down breakfast or the buffet breakfast or both. We also had always already sit-down lunches besides the buffet. Now everything is served. There's no more buffet. And so from that side, we have a fixed seating arrangements. Now, I'm not sure if we keep that in place in the future. Yeah, because many guests don't want to be sitting with the same, assigned to the same people for the entire week. Yeah, they want to have a little freedom in with whom they can eat and so on. But this is the current situation. There's temperature testing, checking upon check-in. Yeah, we also do all the luggage cleaning and so on. But it seems like surface is not the most important part with COVID-19. It's more the droplets. We eliminated singing on board, yeah, for evening entertainment. Because that is a risky area, yeah, and you cannot put a mask in front of a singer. So these are the things. So limitations basically on space, yeah.
Rudi, how are passengers responding to it? Do they accept the mask policy, for example? Because I hear from some hotels and also German ferry operators that there are difficulties. In fact, as a colleague told me the other day, he said, okay, people are on vacation and they seem to forget a lot about the COVID-19 rules. Do you make the same experience, or do people adhere to it and respect it?
So, like I said, we never had any experience with German guests on board. We just finished. We are just finishing the second cruise. Yeah, so we are actually in the second cruise. The first cruise went from Cologne to Antwerp, back to Cologne, and then the current cruise is going from Cologne up to Strasbourg. We also actually accept bookings from Belgium and Netherlands. So we have some people who are joining the cruise in Amsterdam and some actually in Rotterdam, and we have people joining the cruise in Antwerp. The atmosphere on board is fantastic. The whole thing is going through EHOI. Managing director of EHOI is on board, also enjoying it very much. Yeah, so it has been well respected. There is no issue with wearing masks when you go from public areas through public areas and so on. And the only area where it gets a little bit more iffy is in the evening when people have a little more to drink. It gets a little loose.
Frederik, can I just interject
Yes.
one other thing about us and when you mentioned about masks and things like that? You know, SeaDream, our one of our product elements is that we spend with our vessels a lot of time outside. It's part of the yachting concept. Dining, as an example, we do have an indoor dining room, but we don't choose to use that unless necessary. You can have breakfast, lunch, and dinner outside. We on the aft of the vessel on 3 decks. You can have a meal outside. So when you talk about concern, a lot of the concern is in closed areas, and that would be indoors in an inside restaurant. So when you're outside, there's less concern about infection and about the spread. Also, the part of that concept of being outside, we have Balinese beds, so guests can actually sleep outside if they choose on a Balinese bed under the stars. So that is those are elements of our product that distinguish us from what a major large ship would have to encounter in having people contained in inside spaces. We encourage our guests to utilize the outdoor facilities that we have. And
Normally, if I may ask you about that, Emilio, normally you are operating in warmer waters. Now you are operating off the west coast of Norway, where the weather can be quite chilly also in summer. How are passengers responding to that? Is it a problem, or are they really making
it has
use
not
of
been
that
a problem whatsoever. Everybody has truly enjoyed and had an experience that they say, well, it's not normally, this is not a normal voyage. Yes, the temperatures are a little bit more chilly, but it's not, it doesn't take away from the overall experience. And they recognize that if they come on a typical SeaDream voyage, that they will be able to enjoy those facilities even more.
I see.
Several years ago, I cruised on SeaDream Yacht Club in the Caribbean, and I have to say they have one of the most wonderful outside bars I've ever experienced.
There you go. First-hand
In fact,
testament.
I totally agree that that outside activity will become more and more important, and people will start to value that even on other ships. Of course, opportunities are very limited if you are on a big cruise vessel. But right. Even if you are up to the size of, let's say, Hapag-Lloyd cruises, where we have 200, 300 people, you can still do a lot outside, including meals, including serving meals. So I think that's absolutely a point. By the way,
and on
Rudi,
on the river cruises, you do spend most of the time outside in towns, yes, in small groups and so on. So you're really not that much time on the ship.
No, that's right. But are you serving meals outside on deck?
We do serve also on the top deck meals, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's you know, we have in general we have 2 restaurants, yeah, but we have 4 or 5 areas where we can serve meals on our ships. Yeah, I wish hopefully we can bring back the Ama Magna onto the Danube, because that ship has 4 restaurants plus a lot of areas where we do our serve also outside. Yeah, but in general you can serve. Yeah, it gets sometimes windy. Yeah, but you can sit in front of the lounge outside and eat there and so on. So you can sit beyond the top deck. So there are spaces.
I was going to say one other thing about
Yes.
SeaDream and the dining experience. Every one of our meals is pretty much designed to be outdoors. It's not just an aberration. It is part of the game plan that every day, breakfast, lunch, and dinner will be served outside.
I think that's a very important point you're making, because I don't think it's possible to say, okay, we have a restaurant concept and we just move it from the inside to the outside. You have to adapt it to be a good outdoors experience, so to say. But I think this is a very interesting thing you are mentioning. So let's move a little bit ahead while Monic is trying to connect again. Emilio, if I may ask you, what were the challenges, what were the problems that you have been encountering since you resumed operation with the SeaDream 1 and 2? I think you are not just calling Norwegian ports, but you are also visiting Skagen in Denmark, at the north of Denmark. How did that work, that international call?
Well, we had to have at least one international port or foreign port outside of Norway in order to make it an international voyage. But if I had based, not I, but we as a company, if we had based our game plan around the hurdles that we had to make, and some of them seemed almost insurmountable. I was giving you the scenario of a 2-year horizon. With us 4 weeks, the week prior to us actually starting with the first voyage, we had learned that in Denmark, we would not be allowed to disembark any guests when we went and came to Skagen. And as a result, you could have said, well, we need to change this. We need to figure something else out. But we as a company overall, we're very positive. We like to think positive, and that we'll figure out a way around this issue that will work for everyone. And the rule basically was, Norway and Denmark had a relationship, and Denmark said that anybody that's coming to Denmark, if you're coming from Norway, you can arrive, but you need to prove that you'll be in the Danish country for 5 nights. and we're coming on our yacht, and we're only there for a few hours. So there's no way for us to prove that all of our guests are going to be there for 5 nights. It doesn't make sense. So we worked with the channels that we had available to us. And after our third call, we have 19 calls there, 19 voyages that we're working on. We were finally able to get approval that our guests can disembark when they come to Denmark. So if we based everything on what we knew at the front end, we would be, very, very challenged and trying to figure out how to get around this. But we continued on and worked with the circles that we had, and we were able to make that a go. With the other ports of call, we've had hiccups along the way where some of the ports that we had included, we had to make changes to. And on the surface, you would say, well, that's going to be a bad experience. But we've reviewed all of the comment cards as they're coming back, and the comment cards are pretty much saying, well, you haven't taken me to, for example, Geiranger. Can't go to Geiranger, and you've taken us to somewhere else. And those other ports are places that Norwegians have never been to. But they're beautiful, small little villages where they can get access to other fjords, other glaciers, other opportunities to go hiking or biking. And our audience is very, very active. So we've been able to overcome the hurdles and get past the bumps in the road that we've had along the way.
Very good. Monic, I'm glad that you are back online. Can you hear us well?
Yes,
very good.
I can hear you well. You
and
can also hear
me. Very good. I just want to put one more question to Rudi before we move on to you and talk about the post perspective. Rudi, so it seems as if with this luxury yacht concept that SeaDream is operating, it went quite well. And everybody also in the ports was willing to support it and was flexible. What were your experiences now as you restarted river cruising? What were the challenges? What are the problems that you are actually encountering at the moment still?
Actually, I mean, we had pretty much planned for everything what we're doing right now fairly well, and so I don't think, I mean, we don't seem to have any challenges. Things are working smoothly, probably smoother and easier than we expected. People on board are very excited, very happy to be out there and so on. And so from that side, I mean, we are. Things are going very well, very well. I think we are working with Sea Chefs on it. Yeah, Sea Chefs has, I think, besides our ship, they already have right now 10 or 11 other ships already on the river in operation. So things are going very well right now. They had no incident since they started up with any of their ships. And there are quite a few other ships again coming into operation in the next couple of weeks for Sea Chefs. So things are looking good.
And bookings are looking good, as far as I understand.
I mean, bookings. What's happening is we are focusing in the U.S. market. We are focusing on the North American bookings for 2021 and 22. Yeah. June, this past June, was the best month ever for future bookings. So 21 looks very good, and 22, we opened up 22 very early. Normally we don't do it until October, and bookings are very strong for 22.
Very good. Now, Monic, moving on to you. I was, before we were interrupted, I was going to ask you, did you already handle any cruise calls, be it turnaround calls or transit calls of river ships or ocean ships at Amsterdam? Certainly you have brought a plan, a contingency plan, a new concept in place to handle ships under COVID-19. Can you take us a little bit into that concept and tell us about your experiences that you have made so far?
Yes, well, we started the river cruise season 2020 on the 20th of June, and before we could open, we had to convince the health and safety and healthy organizations and the municipality that it would be safe and we could do it in a way that the people of Amsterdam won't take the risk to be infected and you know, all the things. We have docking places in the center of the city, so everyone is looking at us. What we did is we made the decision to start up the river cruising very slowly. And what we did, we created a roadmap, and we started on the 20th of June with the small boat bike tours, the boat bike cruise ships, because in June we still had to deal with the maximum number of 30. And the long ships, it's not a good. They won't sail with only 30 people on board of a 135 or 110 meter ship. So we started with these small ships, and what we decided is that double docking, for example, is not allowed until further notice. So we, of course, we hope we can do it very quickly again, but as far as I can see now, I think that even until the 1st of October, we won't double dock in Amsterdam. And besides that, we will not use all of our docking places. So we plan the ships in a way that not many people in one go enter the quays and run to the buses, because we also need to take care of the 1.5 meter distance. They can at our normal location, when we have 10 long ships over there with altogether, I think also 2,000, 1,500 people. When they all go to the bus at the same time, then we will have a problem at this moment. So yeah, we started slightly, and it goes well. And last weekend we had the first long ship again. And what I learned from the stewards, because that's also what we did now, we hire stewards who control the crowds and who make appointments, go on board of the ship and say, okay, what excursions do you have today, and at what time do you have these excursions? Because you can imagine normally all people come outside and go to the bus, wait in a queue for the bus. What we said in our protocol, for example, is that people need to stay on board until the bus is there, and then they can come out in groups of 5 or 10 people, just to keep the distance and to go in the same way to the touring cars. Yeah, that kind of measures we take, that people are safe at the quay also, and safe. And once they're in a canal boat, it's responsibility of the canal boat operator. And once they're in a touring car, it's the responsibility of the touring car operator. And we are all in a chain. And what you see now is that it's very important that we all, work together and have this and talk to each other and communicate and say, okay, at what time do you go? And in river cruising, that's not a habit so far. In the ocean cruises, it's normal that when you are with 2 ocean cruise vessels at a terminal, that you make appointments and agreements on who is embarking or disembarking at what time. And that's not what we are used to in river cruising. So I think we need to learn that together. But so far it's going quite well. Yeah.
Thank you, Monique. That's good to hear. Actually, obviously, you give passengers a lot of guidance. So stewards around, people around to guide people and to ensure that they adhere to social distancing and so on. You're doing that, but it's accepted also, I understand, by the guests. So the guests behave in the way they should.
Yeah, yeah. And what we noticed, because of course we are also having an eye on what's happening on board, that on board they're really well arranged. And if we or observe that the things are not working well, we immediately contact the cruise line or the agent for our customers, and to help them to do it in the right way and to keep the port open, because that's the most important thing we have to do together.
Absolutely,
I think.
Emilio, are you actually offering shoreside experiences or excursions to your guests in Norway already? Is that done, or is it still under planning only?
No. We've been working with a couple of local shore excursion providers, but I will say that as it relates to our shore excursions, our audience today is pretty independent, and they like the more active experiences. So
Mm,
what we've had to do is not only create standard type of shore excursions, we call them YLAs, or yachting land adventures. Um, we've also have the ability with our vessels, primarily in the places that we go to anchor, to take out our water toys, our kayaks, our jet skis, and we have zodiacs where if we have to take people in some of these more remote places that we go to, take them and do beach landings. Even in Norway, we've been able to do that. And then when we go ashore, we also have bikes on board our vessels so that
mm,
guests can go on independent or organized bike programs with our onboard staff. And we also, through our onboard staff, make hiking available. Now that we have a repetitive itinerary on both vessels going on, we found those places where we say, oh, that's a good place where we can go up the hill and down to the back and over onto the other fjord that's in the background. We can go for a little hike, and our guests love that. So we have created those type of experiences. The tours, our YLAs are normally a main element within what we offer, but with our audience, we found that them being a little more active, we've had to utilize our kayaks, our bikes, and the hiking abilities a little bit more so than we've had in the past.
mm. Rudi, one thing I wanted to ask you, actually, to ask you and Emilio, there has been a lot of debate here in Germany about the impact of air conditions and the potential risk of spreading COVID-19 through air conditions. Have you had to do any amendments to the air condition systems on your ships, or maybe to the operation of the air condition systems, or is that simply not necessary to do anything to change it?
The way it works on our ships, we have in the individual staterooms, we have so-called fan coil systems. So every stateroom has its individual air conditioning, heating, cooling system. The system is built in the hallway, close to at the entrance area, in the ceiling. So every stateroom has its own unit. In the public areas, we have a so-called rainfall system. That means cool air is produced in the ceiling, and through gaps in the ceiling, the cool air falls down and the warm air rises up. Very different than a blowing air conditioning system. Yeah.
Mm.
So we don't have these blowers anywhere where you see these exit areas where air is blown into the public areas. Yeah, so there is no concern about this kind. This is about the safest way, and that's very, very common in general in the cruise industry. Yeah, the
Mm.
tank oil and the airflow systems.
Yeah. How is the situation on board your two ships, Emilia?
Well, to be honest with you, I got to say that I'm going to have to pass on that question because that's outside of my pay grade. I haven't focused on our air conditioning system.
Yeah.
I've been focusing more on our relationship with the different ports and off
Yeah.
the vessel. But
Yeah.
from what I've been told and in the meetings that I've been involved in, um, each room has fresh air pumped into it, and it's not a concern for us as it would be for an operation that has only one system for all the areas.
Mm. Mm. I see. Yeah, you are concerned about the cooperation with ports, and I understand that cooperation is going very, very well. I saw that today your two ships are docked at Rosendal and Rørvik, which are fairly small ports in Norway, actually. But apparently, those small ports are also fully able to cope with ship calls, small ship calls under COVID-19 conditions. Is that right? So your experiences in liaison with ports is quite good in Norway.
Yes, we have, as I was mentioning before, that we've had to adjust our itinerary and find alternate ports. And what we found, and a lot of this was due to the owner himself. He's directly involved in
Mm.
our planning efforts for the Norwegian coast. Atle Brinstad and I and some of the other team members work closely together in formulating those itineraries to places that, I've had to break out my Google Translate to make sure I can pronounce some of these places like Hurenfjorden. There's places that I would never have thought of as a regular possible port of call, but through him and his own knowledge of Norway, he's been able to come back and make suggestions and give us places that make sense for us. Yeah, a lot of the places are very small, and that's part of the attraction for our Norwegian guests. I mentioned about Geiranger. Pretty much every Norwegian that's traveled in Norway has been to Geiranger. So to take that out of the itinerary, yes, it's a little disappointing, but at the same time, going to another place, Fjarland, Norway. Who's been to Fjarland? Very few people, very few Norwegians, and it's very difficult to find these places and to get there on your own. There's not an airport that's there to help you get in and out. So it's somewhat remote, and we've anchored off of these places. We've zodiaced in and done beach landings. We've taken out our kayaks and had experiences for our guests, and they love it. It's been a great experience for them working with some of these smaller ports.
What I take with me from what you have been telling is that actually operation under COVID-19 conditions runs rather smoothly and runs even better than expected. So let's have a look out how this season can continue and what the season 2021 may be like, because apparently COVID-19 is going to be a topic for us for some time into the future at least. A German virologist a few days ago told it would take 10 years to get more or less rid of that, or to get it under permanent control. Let's not hope it will be like that, but certainly it will be an issue also next year. So I think it's important to talk about that. Rudi,
before you go on, can I just interject one thing? I don't want to make light of the issue of COVID and what we do. It is a big concern. And I believe that what our experience in Norway may be somewhat of an aberration, because when we get to the Mediterranean and get back to the Caribbean, the EU gateway guidelines and what each member state will put into place, very complex, will be very, very involved. And what may end up happening is that we will have to go back and look how those guidelines, and then they'll become protocols and proper regulations, how those will be manifested in our ability to deliver in a given port of call. We may find that we have to go back and revise our itinerary somewhat in some of these more remote places in the Mediterranean and in the Caribbean. Norway is a little bit of an aberration today, but I think that as it relates to the rest of the world and the other places that we call on, we are taking it very seriously, and we recognize that we may have to make some adjustments down the road.
I can absolutely see that. Yes. Of course, the situation is a little bit different on the rivers, and the protocol is actually that has been drafted has been by IG River Cruise has been less complex than the EU Health Gateway regulations now. Rudi, looking further down the road, you already mentioned, okay, until now it says operation ceased until the 31st of August. You may switch that into September. Do you think we will see US American guests coming over and doing a river cruise here in Europe this year? Do you expect it? Or do you think this season will be entirely lost for your core source market?
I still do hope that we get at least a couple of months of cruising in, yeah. And we still have, I mean, we cruise with pretty much all of our ships until the beginning of the next year. So we go through Christmas, through the new Christmas markets. Yeah, that's also an unknown right now. What will happen exactly with the Christmas markets? Will they be open? Will there be limitations, and so on and so on? But so we are still predicting that we will get a little cruising in, maybe with a few of our ships. Yeah, if it doesn't work out, yeah, this is not up to us. This is up to the EU, and this is up to the development of the COVID-19 in North America. Every 2 weeks, I think the EU is reviewing the future, and then they are saying, yes, you can come or you cannot come. So hopefully we'll get some in. Does it make a huge difference from the financial side? Not really, not at all, yeah, because if you come to Europe, we will come with rather small numbers on board, yeah, 30, 40, 50% capacity, something like that. So we still hope, I mean, that eventually there will be first of all, there will be some medication, and then eventually a vaccine. How long that will take is a good question. We then are starting up again in March 21, and then we'll see what the restrictions and implications are going to be. But in the long run, I think river cruising still has a bright future. Yeah, the demand is very, very strong for small ship cruising. River cruising, you are most of the time on land. You are in a small environment, and I'm looking already, like I said earlier, I'm looking at the whole ship design for the future, the implications of this, the whole dining experience, different layouts of the restaurant, different layouts of the kitchen to serve those restaurants and so on. Possibly even less passengers on board. So these are all these implications and the rules, yeah, and so that's where we are right now. But I think in the long run, yeah, it's going to be bright. I mean, the demand is very, very strong for river cruising. It will continue as soon as we get through this, and we will get through the COVID-19. Yeah, how long it takes is an unknown. Yeah.
Emilio, can you tell us a little bit about your plans that you have for the next couple of months? You are at the moment concentrating a lot on Norway, but I think you also intend to move south again. What are your plans? What can you tell us at the moment? What will happen?
Well, we are published out through the end of the year. Our immediate plans are to sail into Norway and through Norway until on one vessel September 7th. On the second vessel, I think it's September 21st. And then they both take a similar path going from Oslo down to Lisbon. And one vessel will continue for about 4 voyages in the Mediterranean in October, and then moves over to the Caribbean via transatlantic. The other vessel will be taken out of service for an extended dry dock. We have plans to do some extensive work on that vessel. And it will surface, it will come back into operation in the Caribbean in December. So we are looking to have both vessels operating in the Caribbean through our normal period of time until April, and then we will turn around and come back to the Mediterranean. Those are our immediate plans. We have not published anything beyond our 2022 winter Caribbean season, but we are finalizing those plans to return to the Med in 2022, and we'll probably have those out within the next couple of months at the latest.
Very good. Rudi and Emilio, I would like to ask you a final question. Of course, we don't have a crystal ball. That's a big problem. But nevertheless, the question is, where will our industry, and now I'm putting together the river industry, the river cruise industry, the luxury cruise industry, expedition cruise industry, and yacht cruising, if I may call it that way. Where will we stand this autumn, and where will we stand next spring? What are your expectations? You already both gave the message that this industry is going to survive, but how is it surviving? What are your expectations for the next, let's say, 3 months and 6 to 9 months? Rudi, maybe you would like to start.
I mean, I don't have much of expectations for the next 3 months. Yeah, for us, if we can get a couple of more ships on the river, to really just operate, I wouldn't say there's not much of financial benefit in it, but it would be good to get people back on the river and to show the industry that we are cruising, to show the guests that we are cruising. So my prediction is for this year is if we can do it, fine. If we don't do it, we'll move it into the next year. hopefully by spring, by March, April, things will get fairly back to normal. It still could be that we might have all different kinds of restrictions in. We'll see if there's a second wave, a third wave coming back, and we'll see where medication comes in. I think my understanding is there are 130, 640 vaccines right now already on trial. Yeah, and I think that would eventually solve the problem. Yeah. But until then, yeah, hard to foresee. We will get over the whole thing. We got over all the crises before.
Yeah.
For a year, the last year, every conference was talk about the green environment. And then suddenly COVID-19 happened and everything is green. Yeah,
absolutely. So, I'm sure that the green issues will come up later on. That will certainly happen. Emilio, how do you see the next, let's say, 3 months and 6 to 9 months?
Well, my crystal ball is got a lot of that African Sahara dust bowl blowing through, so it's not very clear. But I'll give you my personal opinion. I think that we're going to go through a degree of contraction. You already see some of that with some major lines selling their vessels or contracting. I think it's going to be very slow. I think that those that start up will obviously start up with very short voyages, 3-day to 7-day. I believe that that it'll take a little while before Americans truly start opening up. I think there's a lot of demand there, but still, it won't be because of the demand. It will be more because of the infrastructure and airlines making themselves available. Right now, you know, to get to Europe for a typical American, if they let you in, you're probably looking at 3, maybe 4 stops along the way. You know, flights to be able to get from point A to point B, or point D, I should say. I think that that what's going to eventually happen, and this is just my own personal opinion, is that we've seen the industry grow from a period of time when, say, 10 to 20 years ago, it evolved into being with these bigger and bigger vessels coming out, and that the vessels were the destination in and of themselves. You had, again, 2,000 to 6,000 people all contained within a given environment on board. I think that smaller vessels, us, Rudi, myself, the Silver Seas, the Seaborns, the Windstars of the world will see the opportunity that people will want to go on those smaller vessels more so than the big ones. I just believe that we will see a reemergence of smaller cruising. And a lot of it will be to more natural settings. I think that another arena that has a wealth of opportunity are these expedition ships going to Antarctica or going to Iceland or Greenland or up to Svalbard. I think that those will have the opportunity to continue to grow. With us being a small ship operator, we're in a fairly unique niche, and I think we're well positioned to be successful. We have a good following. We have a good number of people that that know about us and know of our quality, and I don't see that we're going to have a lot of problem in adjusting and complying with the different rules and regulations that come out in place by Europe and by the US CDC. And I think that we'll be able to see a reemergence, or a return, I should say, to cruising the way that we knew once before in a matter of a year.
Thank you very much. That's quite a firm forecast. Thank you very much.
Well, it's
thank
still
you, Emilia.
unclear.
Thank you, Rudi. Thank you, Monic, for being with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that you have enjoyed this Seatrade cruise talk. I'm pretty sure we'll come back to this topic later this summer. As outlined, more cruise lines in the upmarket and expedition sector are going to restart their operations. So I think we will have another review of that later this year. Thank you very much, and all the best to you all.